home tonight and you are helping make dinner and you cut yourself, you cut your finger, raise your hand if you would know what to do in that instance. Okay. Everyone's like, why is the psychologist asking us about how to use a Band-Aid? Okay, I'm going to ask you this. Raise your hand if you know what to do when you experience pain and suffering. When you're embarrassed, when you fail, when you're rejected, when you experience loss. Raise your hand if you know what to do in that instance. Look around. I'm really interested to talk to you guys a bit more later. So, girls, one of the things that we know is that we do a pretty good job telling you what to do if you are in physical harm. We tell you, this is first aid, this is what you do if you injure yourself. But what we forget to do is to tell you what to do when you experience psychological injury, when you experience suffering and pain. You know, we heard the lyrics in that song that says, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. And given this is part of the human condition, why is it that we struggle to know what do we do in that instance? And so what do we do instead? We think we're the only one that experiences pain and suffering. We think that we're really alone. We actually withdraw from other people. I was thinking last night, knowing I was going to speak to you today, about when have there been moments in my life when I've really experienced pain and suffering. And I remember in year 6. Year 6, I think I had my first experience of real heartbreak because my very best friend in the world said, I don't want to be your best friend anymore. I know, thank you. You guys just had a compassion response, right? You felt compassion for me. And yet often, when we experience pain and suffering, we're not compassionate to ourselves. I wondered, what did I do wrong? You know, why me? There's something wrong with me. She doesn't want to be my friend anymore. I think about when I was in year 12. 6 weeks before what is now our ATAR exams, and you know, we've got year 12s here today that are in term 3. 6 weeks before my ATAR exams, my parents separated. You guys can come and hug me later. And it was painful. I suffered. But because I was in year 12, I needed to just really get through year 12. And I didn't really talk to anyone about that experience. I just kind of suffered in silence. Just last week, I seriously embarrassed myself. And I'm of great entertainment to my family and friends because I'm pretty good at embarrassing myself on a regular basis. I talked about snot at a World Congress. So, I kid you not, I was presenting last week on some of my research, so I'm doing a PhD at the moment on Wellbeing, on flourishing classrooms. I was presenting at an international conference. There was 1,600 people at this conference. I practiced this speech, I had it down pat. And then for some reason, I shared this story with everybody. And basically I talked about, hey, doing a PhD is really hard. And it's so hard that one night I got so upset I cried my eyes out. I remember ringing my mum and being like, I can't do it anymore, it's too hard. What I'd forgotten was I'd been to the beautician earlier that day and I just had a fake tan sprayed on. Now if anyone's ever fake tanned, you need to leave it for 4 hours to set. And do you know what happens when it gets wet? It comes off. I'd forgotten I had this tan setting on my face. And so when I went to the mirror later, and I cried, and I snot cried, because you know there's like on the movies and there's pretty crying? I don't cry like that, like I really bring it. So I went to the mirror later, forgetting I had this fake tan, because I could belong in a Twilight movie, I'm so pale, and it had set with my tears. And so I had to walk around for about 10 days with tear streaks and snot streaks from crying over my PhD. I shared that story at an international conference. And I kind of forgot the 99% of the great material and the research I presented, and I got off the stage and I kept saying, I talked about snot. It's like, I can't believe I talked about snot. And I felt foolish, I felt really embarrassed, and I felt no other presenter would ever do that. And I remember two of my friends had come and watched, and I kept saying to them, I can't believe I just did that. I've made a fool of myself, and that is all anyone is going to remember about this presentation. I forgot that everyone gets embarrassed. We all experience pain and suffering, and yet I thought at that moment in time, I was the only one. And this is what happens when we experience pain and suffering. We isolate ourselves. And when we isolate ourselves, our greatest fear as human beings, and particularly you girls at your age, is that we will no longer belong. That we will no longer be accepted by our peers, we will no longer be accepted by our friends. And so when we suffer and we think we're different to everybody else, we actually don't feel connected. Which is why, when we experience pain and suffering, it is so important that we talk to each other about it and we understand it's just part of the human condition and that we lean on each other. The second line that I really want to draw to you in that song is it says, if we are wise, we know there is always tomorrow. One of the things when we're suffering is we think it's never going to end. And yet, even when really, really good things happen in your life, and really good things are going to happen in your life, and you're going to have pain and suffering, it is always temporary. And sometimes we forget that when we haven't had enough life experience. So I want you to remember that there's always tomorrow, and that in actual fact, even when you are having your worst day, it is temporary. The third part of the song I want to really pull to your attention is the part that says, lean on me when you are not strong. As girls, we're better at this, and you heard before about when we sing, we release oxytocin. We produce more oxytocin than boys. Go us. Because we're nurturers. And so actually when we hug each other, when we care for each other, when we're kind, we release this really good feel-good hormone. We also talk to each other more. We're better at that. Do you know that as girls, we talk 3 times as much as boys? Have you ever got home and you go to talk to your friends and your mum and dad are like, didn't you just spend all day at school? Yeah, because we've got to talk a lot to each other. That is a gift that we have. We're good at talking to each other. So what we want to be able to do is to lean on each other when we need to. There's a nerve in your body called the vagus nerve. Now, if you need to practice self-compassion, if you need to soothe yourself, you can use that nerve, particularly when we breathe, to help soothe ourselves. But that nerve, who's heard the saying, trust your gut? Anyone ever heard that? It actually is trust your vagus nerve, because that is the nerve that runs through your stomach. So what I really want to challenge you to do here today is, first of all, if you have someone that you are worried about, I want you to ask them, is everything okay? But my challenge to you is ask them twice, because we kind of get into the etiquette of saying, yeah, I'm good, and say, are you okay really? And then people stop and think and go, am I okay? How am I travelling right now? Ask them twice. I want you to trust your vagus nerve, and if you have a bit of an instinct that something's not alright with one of your friends, I want you to check in with them, because you're wired with this biology to look after other people and check in on them if things are not okay. So I want you to be able to look after other people. When you have a friend that's struggling, you don't actually have to fix the problems for them. You just have to listen, and they have to feel heard. And when we're able to say, I'm in pain, I'm suffering, I'm feeling alone, when we name it, our brain goes, it soothes. Loneliness is the biggest risk factor to your well-being. You're going to be doing a lot with your well-being strategy, and there's a lot of things that you can have and not have, and you'll probably be okay with your well-being. But if you have poor relationships, if you're lonely, it is very unlikely that you will have high levels of well-being. My own son, when he was in high school, He suffered from mental health issues. I'm a trained psychologist. And do you know how I figured out that he wasn't okay? Because I said to him, do you feel lonely? And he said, yeah, actually I do. So if you feel lonely, I want you to talk to someone about that. Because we don't want anyone to feel that way. But good relationships, and not just being a good friend when someone's experiencing pain and suffering. Good relationships are being a good friend in the good times. Good relationships are celebrating when things go right for our friends. We're normally pretty good if a friend comes to us and says, I'm struggling with something. We generally put things down, we listen, we offer our help. But think about when your friends come to you and share good news with you and tell you some good news. I want you to really think about how do you respond to your friends in those moments. Because when your friend is sharing good news with you, it is just as much a bid for your attention. They want something from you. They want you to celebrate with them. And it doesn't have to be big news, but we need to buy into that bid for our attention. 2 weeks ago, I rang my mum and I said, I've just submitted my first journal article for publication, and I sent her the manuscript that the journal article had sent us. This was big, good news. My mum rang me 2 hours later and she said, look, I've read through it. There's just a couple of things I've noticed. And she said, on page 2, there's a comma missing. And I said, thanks, Mum. Really appreciate you looking at it, but I can't do anything about it now. It's been submitted for publication. They will go through that process. I can't make any changes. She said, okay, I understand. On page 4, there's something else. And she told me all 5 of the things she had picked up in my journal article. Now, Mum at that time thought she was helping me, right? But what she actually did was she forgot I told her about it to share my good news with her. And what she did didn't make it feel like good news. It didn't celebrate. And so what we want to be doing when people share good news with us is saying, tell me more about it. How did you feel when that happened? You know, what was it like? What are you going to do to celebrate? So my challenge to you is this. Don't just be a good friend when you're not strong. There's a line missing from that song, and it's be a good friend so we can all be strong. Because our relationships with each other is the most protective thing to strengthen our well-being. And so I really encourage you to be kind, celebrate with each other, but trust your gut if you're not sure a friend is okay. And be willing to accept that part of the human condition is that we all suffer, and that's okay. So thank you.